They're frozen pretzels.
Oh,
Yeah, frozen frosted pretzels. They got some quick sugars, so I can get my. Actually, there's a lot of corn syrup in here, so probably not the best. And they're from Ohio, so probably not a good move. Skibbity, Ohio.
no. Potential investors watching our Discord the one time that they joined, and we were 20 minutes late.
Yeah, sorry guys. Thank you for hopping in. We're 20 minutes late.
That's on me. I don't really know why my camera settings decided to reset, but
It is on him. Blame him. Okay. I was sure.
maybe.
Is that some decor in your background?
Yeah, it's postcards my wife's been collecting over the years, and she just decided this was the room to put them. I'm not really sure why.
Hey, at least it's something. At least it doesn't look like you're in a cabin in the woods or something.
Yeah.
Well, welcome in, guys. I want to start this episode with an example. Imagine a 19-year-old in a basement with nothing but Wi-Fi and a dream, just like Anthony 1 or 2 years ago. Been a few more years than that. Maybe in your dorm room. This person beats and is beating billion-dollar venture capitalists at their own game. Tonight, we're going to expose the entire unicorn startup funding playbook, every single funding round, how this stuff works if you're an absolute beginner, how to take a company and bring it to the big leagues, and especially every dirty trick that will get you from start to finish like the pros. And then finally, we're going to reveal the rebellion and the movement that makes it obsolete and why we're transitioning out of this and to something even better yet. This is episode 33. This is the Ascended Podcast. My name's Caleb Schulke.
Anthony Para.
Yeah. We gotta I gotta activate myself. I always have to take a cold shower before I get. I don't know what you do beforehand, but I just went from squatting like in the almost 400 pounds for reps to box jumps to sprints all in the same workout. Bulgarian split squat. So on leg days, I feel extra accomplished, but I'm beat up by the time I get here. Like my face had a little bit of time to de-redden itself while we were getting set up, but I have to get my blood sugar going. I usually have to drink a protein shake and stuff and just take a cold shower to kind of reset. I don't know what you do before our podcast or what your usually routine is, but
usually I have dinner like an hour before, and then I just spend some time in the Discord or on the website, just making sure I'm updated on my tasks. But I don't know, I just kind of work before.
Yeah. So at least I honestly think that's better. I don't know. I have this spoon. I think it was from I ordered ramen the other day, so I had it sitting on my desk. Very good. When you're sick, there's nothing like some ramen with boiled egg. Oh my god, it hits the spot. But I feel like when you get momentum going, it's so much easier to just continue it. That's why we could have this podcast at 9 p.m., which is probably when more people are online. But it just makes more sense to continue strong with the momentum of already having accomplished stuff, and it makes it feel like you're actually you're using that energy rather than sitting around for a while and then trying to reactivate yourself late at night. Plus, I know you and I both like to kind of get our stuff done as soon as possible. Yeah. So here we are, guys, trying to build a movement, which is Altura, while we're also building this podcast and documenting everything we're doing in the form of these episodes once a week. And obviously I catch up with you guys on weekends and during the week as well, too. But everything happens in stages, right? One thing leads to the next. And eventually you create this pattern of momentum and growth that carries you forward to a point of success in life. That's the exact same thing we're talking about tonight, but with businesses. You don't most people think and get confused because they think that, you just start a company, you sell lemonade, you reinvest your couple cents on your lemonade cups back into buying more lemonade, and you just do that a few times and you're a billionaire. But in reality, if we all did it that way, it would probably take us until we were 150 years old to become absolutely rich, like the people in the big leagues today. So you need outside help. You need to speed up this cycle. And the only logical way to do that, to become a unicorn and grow as fast as possible, is by using other people's money. They say, right, it's better to own 10% of a $500 million company, $50 million valuation for you, than owning 100% of $1 million company. Obviously, there's a lot less stress. There's more peace of mind owning something yourself. But partnering with people, using other people's influence, decision-making ability, input, and their money speeds up the process drastically. And nobody really accomplishes anything great by themselves. In 2025, there's about 1,200 unicorns that exist. This comes from CB Insights. They don't exist in the real sense yet. The problem is 99%, so just over 1,100 of those 1,200 unicorn companies that have been started, probably about 1,000 plus at this point in the year, with some coming still, are built on venture capital money that owns the founder by Series C. That sentence might not make a lot of sense to those of you who aren't familiar, but for those of you who are, you can see where I'm coming from. I'm going to explain every single funding round from pre-seed to seed to Series A, all the way to Series C, like you're 12, basically. Because to me, I had to break this down so simply. Anthony and I both had lessons on this, right, in our business major, right, from the school we went to, and it's still confusing. So I understand how you guys may or may not understand the concepts behind this, but that's all right. Because within 20 minutes or so, you should have a good enough understanding to go out there and at least figure out your strategy to growth as well. I'm going to share with you real unicorn origin stories. Anthony and I are going to provide our input, and we're going to talk about how our strategy with Altura is bending the way that companies can grow while still adhering to all the rules, SEC compliant, and doing things in our own fashion, and in a way that allows us to own our founding rights by Series C. All right. So, Anthony, venture capitalism is typically compared to marrying for money, right? You are partnering with people because they have money that you don't. You might have the ability to work hard on something. You'll see people go on Shark Tank, right, and ask for money that they don't have. Clearly, these billionaires do. These billionaires a lot of times just provide the money. You provide the labor, the sweat equity, and that's why to them it's valuable, because they don't have time to start 50 companies. But the return they can get from investing in 50 great companies is astronomical if they actually, play their cards right. There's a with every great marriage, right, is a could potentially be a great honeymoon phase, right? Getting started off the ground, getting the funding, and making the deals happen. It's when you feel like the man in business, right? But a lot of times, a lot of these ventures end in what I would call a terrible divorce, meaning that founders naturally disagree. You see companies have fissures, right? There's inconsistency about the vision forward, and a lot of times conflict from the inside breaks these companies apart. Do you know any founder stories that you could relate this to? Do you know any like failures in business you would say that happened when companies were trying to get off the ground and they had disagreements?
Man, I feel like we were told about so many examples, like as case studies in college, but I honestly don't remember the details of many.
I'll give you one. And this just came into my mind. ChatGPT. Sam Altman's board initially tried to fire him, and he ended up replacing all of the people on his board. They tried to kick him off as CEO. That's the problem, guys. When you try to fundraise too much and you have disagreements with the people you're fundraising for. Sam Altman relied on all these big investors to come in and fund ChatGPT's progress, but a lot of them had inputs that he didn't feel aligned with his vision for the company. And so it became this conflict where all the people with the money own a considerable portion of ChatGPT. And here's Sam Altman, the CEO, right? And he has some partnerships still with the other investors. And they're trying to remove him because, they basically, they own, right, in their own way, a share because of the work or money work that they put in. And Sam Altman ended up having to replace every single member on his board to allow ChatGPT to continue under his vision. For all we know, that could be good or bad, but that is a recent example, I would say, of, board issues on a startup that we've, all are familiar with. Do you have any other examples? Can you think of any like big launch failures?
Yeah, didn't like Steve Jobs at some point, like, or is that am I mixing that with Microsoft? At some
Well,
point,
Jobs and Wozniak had a big kind of disagreement, right? And obviously, Jobs is more of the face of the company. Wozniak was more of like I believe Wozniak was more of the tech guy. Like he was kind of like Jobs was the visionary, right? Wozniak was more of the like programmer guy. And they kind of had a disagreement at some point. And that's just kind of how it happens, dude. Zuckerberg is probably, you guys watch Zuckerberg's, what's the movie called with him? Where he's like in the college dorms, right? This is like the social experiment or something. I forgot what it's called. Social dilemma or something like that. He like, right, it obviously showed him with what is it, the Winklevoss twins, right? The two investors, right? They're trying to start, a fraternity style basically dating app or way of, measuring attract. It was kind of like a Tinder style thing, right? And then Zuckerberg had his own vision for it. He ended up kind of taking the elements of what he was going to build for I think the Winklevoss twins. Is that how you say it? Their names. And then he bent that basically to be Facebook, and not only competed against it, but kind of like literally gave up on their project to kind of build his own thing. That's my interpretation of kind of what happened. Obviously, watch the movie or do the research yourself. But another good one is like, yeah, I love Facebook's Tesla, and PayPal is a really good one too. If you look at the PayPal mafia, I wouldn't say Tesla has many big issues. It's mainly just Elon, but PayPal had a lot of founders. So looking at the way that they communicated was huge too. And that's why, again, at the end of the day, we could go over these examples all night, but it's make sure, just like a marriage, you're familiar with who you're getting into bed with and what these people are actually offering beyond just money, right? When if people on Shark Tank offer the same amount of money, it's not that like one deal is, the deal is better or worse because of who is offering the money and what they think that person can add. It's kind of like, right, The Voice or X Factor too, right? You're picking a judge because that judge has a certain talent set, just like a business, advisor that aligns with what your vision is and the type of person you are. First of all, to break it down, we need to understand the different types of phases of funding. So, roughly speaking, right, if you're a new founder, there's 4 big phases. There's pre-seed, there's seed, there's Series A, Series B. Series C is like kind of at the very big far end. In probably about 20 seconds, here's the breakdown. Pre-seed funding is when you're in the development stage. You're building your product, you have blueprints, nothing's really finalized yet. You're kind of still in the development phase. Very, very low valuation, right? You can barely even you can't even really evaluate your company. It's probably not even worth paying somebody to do yet. You're kind of just agreeing on what the company is worth and what the vision for your product is worth. Nothing's really like, a lot of things are abstract. Seed funding is when you kind of have a finalized product and you're trying to grow it. You have a little bit of revenue and you're trying to expand that to actually become a reputable business with consistent output. Right. So technically you have a product now, you're trying to actually get that product out into a market. And this is your big, moment where you come on Shark Tank and ask for that next step. A lot of people on Shark Tank are probably in the seed funding round or they're in Series A. Series A is when typically a company crosses $1 million a year in MRR or sorry, not MRR, ARR. So annual revenue, making about $1 million a year. And Series B is when a company is making about $10 million a year. So basically defining what stage of growth you're in can kind of be bucketed into those, unique terms. But we're going to talk about each one real quick, starting with the kind of most infamous one, which is the pre-seed seed round. Honestly, in a lot of ways, Altura is kind of still in this, right? Because we're still building out a lot of our functionality. Nova AI is still not yet on the App Store or the marketplace. It will be very soon. So technically, as of this point, it's being tested. It's not a finalized product producing revenue yet. So I would call this the pre-seed phase. This is also known as the garage phase, right? The people inventing Apple computers from their garage. So a lot of times this is between $25,000 evaluation up to probably $5 million valuation. That's not like revenue, right? Like I just said, that's like total company value. So a lot of times, right, if you're doing $1 million a month, you're probably valued between $10 to $50 million or much higher than. But a lot of the sources for funding, right, you might be in the stage if you're relying on friends and family, angel investors, accelerators, parents, partners, spouses, things like that to invest in yourself because you don't have massive connections yet. Or you're unproven, or your idea is so good that you have these very speculative investors coming in. So this metaphor for this is kind of like planting seeds in your backyard with your own garden hose. Like you're not relying on fertilizer, all these extra, fancy things to help get you along. You're just hoping on a wing and a prayer a lot of times that the seeds are going to grow if you plant them and at least have something to show for it. You're just putting it in the ground and getting it started. So the risk, though, is one bad storm can wipe you out completely, right? So if you don't have stability in funding, if you don't have the revenue yet and you're in pre-seed, that means that one mistake, maybe a bad product breakdown, maybe you run out of money for development, that can end everything. And so you've poured money in and you didn't get a lot out. And I honestly think this is a great argument because the people that say that, business owners just kind of cheat the system, I would challenge that on this point because a lot of times most people get stuck in pre-seed They never make it to actual seed rounds. They never create consistent revenue. And so like 90+% of businesses spend all this money on development and never get anywhere. And I think rewarding entrepreneurs for their investment in creating a tangible product and producing economic value is probably a really good thing. And so that's where I think tax write-offs and all the things come back to benefit people and create that opportunity, because most people get stuck in this first phase. 80% of unicorns, by the way, are people that have massively exploded in probably the matter of about 18 to 24 months from pre-seed to Series B. So going from nothing to millions of dollars annually in revenue in about 2 years or so. 80% of these companies started with less than $1 million total invested. So they're not billionaires, they're not millionaires. Most of the time, actually, 80% of these successes are people just like you and me, people that are in their high school, college dorms, right? And just trying to make it. And that comes from Kaufman 2025 study. Okay. So do you know what bootstrapping is? Can you define it for the people listening?
Yeah, bootstrapping is like the metaphor, pulling yourself up by the strap of your boots, like you're funding it yourself. So pretty much anything you do with operations, marketing, any money spent is done just by you putting together whatever you can.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure actually the term bootstrapping came after the Great Depression. I think that because that was literally people that were like surviving just with like what they could literally carry in their boots. Like they stuck their cash in their boots and, tried to survive. Pretty sure that's where it comes from. I might be wrong on that, but can you compare bootstrapping a company to all right, so this is what I wrote down. This is a fun experiment. So how would you compare, let's say you're in a kitchen cooking a meal, what would bootstrapping look like? Let's say Series B funding, right, is you're already proven, you come in, you have a chef make you a meal for you, you don't really have to do any work. You've already shown that you can cook, so a chef comes and does basically the work for you. They're providing outside resources and funding. What would bootstrapping look like if you had to make a meal in the kitchen?
I'd probably be making it from scratch, even to the point of you got to read a recipe to figure out what it is you got to do.
Yeah, that's like the people, bootstrapping is like people who, crack an egg and throw it in a brick of ramen noodles and try to, make a meal out of that or something like that. You're basically just throwing together what you have, and hoping, that'll carry you along at least enough. And right, that's how most people get started. And that's okay, because that's honestly, in my opinion, the American dream. That's literally pulling yourself up with what you got and trying to make it work. And a lot of times, right, you can't just like tell people you have this great idea and get money, unless you're repeatedly proven, which unfortunately only the top people who have already won get. You kind of have to start at this point. So moving on from this phase, we get to the seed phase, right? That becomes just an accelerated portion of this, right? Where you've now kind of proven your traction and you're moving into a phase where people can start to believe in you, right? It's now that you have some groceries in the kitchen, right? You can actually pay for some ingredients and you can start cooking your own meals. Now you can actually start playing with things that might actually taste a little bit better, right? And produce better results for you. This is probably the first time you see profitability increase, because the first time, right, is all just proof of concept. This is literally, guys, in my business management class too, they explain, if you have a website, it might literally just be a PowerPoint slide of the website, and then it would just be another screenshot of what the next slide of the website looked like. And sometimes if you're designing an app on your phone, it might literally be a hand-drawn sketch with a pencil about what that app looks like. It can be that preliminary. But moving into seed round, right, you have a little bit more resources. You can probably build the basic skeletons and get the products working. And now you're just going on Shark Tank, right, and saying, this is starting to get results. We're a little bit early yet, but we want to expand this into the market. This is what we need to get it done. So I'm going to kind of not focus too much on like seed funding, right, because it's kind of just a continuation. The problem is, and I will make this note, once you move from pre-seed to seed funding, it's very hard to go back because it becomes a catch-22. You have to, seed funding's purpose is to get you to the point where you have the resources to actually make your idea come into reality. And if you don't budget right what you're asking for in the pre-seed round, and you move into the seed round with, this amount of funds claimed, if the math is wrong and that didn't actually get you the product, you can't go back, because investors are going to ask, why isn't it existing if you said you needed this amount of money? And then you kind of look like a failure, right? You kind of look like You don't know what you're doing because you have to go back and ask for more money. But then you also can't push it to the next round because it doesn't exist yet. So you're kind of stuck in this like gray zone. You have to be very careful about the first time you ask for funds. Be confident and understand that how much money is actually going to take. The biggest thing that kills entrepreneurs is not valuing the amount of resources they're actually going to need. When you're asking for money, you just understand you're already technically begging people, right? Like as legally and officially as it gets. Just ask for what you need. That's going to cost you in the long run if you're not willing to go out and do that. Which is why investors look at the founders and they say, does this guy actually know what he's doing? Or gal, right? Are they confident in the vision, and can I trust that they value them? They take themselves seriously. Because if I don't take myself seriously, a lot of times I'm not going to go out and get my company what it needs. Just like a parent, right? If your kid's starving at home and you say, oh, I'll just have a piece of bread, that's fine, instead of asking for the whole loaf, do you really care about your child's health and safety? Same as a company too, right? So go out and be bold about what you ask for and deliver as aggressively as possible. That's really what Mark Cuban is looking for when he interviews these founders a lot of the time, and why a 13-year-old might get more funding than a 35-year-old. It's all in the confidence. All right, so let's talk about the first real stage of success, Series A. This is the first, what I would call, real boss fight of fundraising and entrepreneurship. This is when your company is valued between about $5 to $30 million total valuation, right? So that would assume you're probably doing between 250 to 500,000 a month, maybe, roughly, at the most. The average is about, $19 million for the average company valuation in Series A. And this is kind of where people start thinking Silicon Valley level, the first institutional venture capitalists. So go to companies like Sequoia, A16Z. These are the big Silicon Valley groups that are investing in these startups. This is like where Uber would start to get its funding. The problem is, this is when you start seeing pretty big dilution. So at this point, if you're asking for money, assume about 20 to 30% of anything you're going to achieve with your company is basically going to be gone forever because you're giving that up to investors. The metaphor of this is you basically just sold the steering wheel of the car that you just built. Somebody else is now coming in and they have control to drive it alongside you. And you have to be willing to make that sacrifice and get into bed with somebody to take your company from $10 million to $100 million, right? Because owning 10% of 100 million is better than owning 100% of 1 million. It's a lot more of a headache though. So you have to be ready for that. And there's a huge reason a lot of people just stay at the phase where, they make basically a glorified income without bringing partners in because it's a lot more peaceful, but they'll never actually get to the big leagues. So you have to make that decision. Series A, this is my metaphor and kind of tie into a question for you. But I said that Series A is kind of like selling your kidney on the black market. You kind of have to make the devil's bargain, right? Like you need cash desperately and you can't just go out and get a loan for this amount of money. Somebody has to come in, and even if you got a loan, right, it's going to be at a high interest rate because you're still speculative. So basically the only option you have is to find another speculator that's willing to high risk, high reward this, and you better be willing to give them something valuable enough to compensate them. So what do you think is the kind of everyday founders like devil's bargain at that stage? What do you think most people starting businesses goes through their head before they realize they kind of have to make this decision, like on the day-to-day level in operations? What are they lacking? What do you think is problematic for them?
First I would say lacking the skills they need. Like they kind of get to a point where they realize you can't be a professional at everything. You can't continue doing marketing and operations and be the face of the company and be posting to social media and doing everything that it takes and like on the floor doing the actual work, whatever it is that you sell. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind is at a certain point it becomes too much for you to handle by yourself. So you have to look into, and like if you want, we make the example of Shark Tank. Like a lot of times the people that are asking for money on Shark Tank will choose out of multiple offers for maybe the same like offer as far as what their expectation for for compensation is. Even though it's the same, a lot of times they'll choose one over the other because of one certain skill set in marketing or one certain networking group or something like that. So I think it comes down to the skills you need to like actually succeed is probably too much at that point, is 100% too much at that point for just one person or one team to handle. I think I'm going to stay with that answer actually. Like I said,
So I would add on to that. You, like I said before, the decision of do I want to own my company or do I want to make it to the big leagues, right? It's like an athlete, right? Like I can be a good athlete if I want to do everything myself. But I got to put my ego aside and let a good ass head coach, the next Vince Lombardi come in and coach me if I want to make it to the big leagues. I need their resources. I need to pair myself with a team, right? That's the only way to really make it where you want to go. Kind of like music artists too, right? I can produce my own music, but I usually need a label if I want to be put everywhere and be one of the top 50 artists in the world. So it is like a black market deal, right? Because a lot of times you don't want to give up a quarter of your company, but the return on investment from dealing with that and adding the headache of having to you know now listen to what all these other people want. It's good if you realize that most of the time, if you're pairing with the right people, they probably know more than you do. So as long as they're the right people with money, you're probably winning either way. And sure, you got to communicate with them, but that's half of leadership too. And a lot of times you'll 10 or even 100x your investment by bringing in this money. But at some point, you have to. If you want to make the dreams come true, as they say, you got to be willing to pay the price, right? Make a deal with the devil. So this leads us into the next stage, the kind of final stage where everybody blows up, right? Your Uber, your DoorDash, your PayPal, big companies in Silicon Valley. This is where things start to get known, like ChatGPT. This is Series B and Series C, and we're going to combine these to kind of the second to last round. The last round is going to be kind of our IPO stage, right? But Series B and Series C, I call this blitz scaling or die. And it's really basically Series B, right, is about 10 million. Series C, just add a zero. So it's $100 million valuation in a company. So that's where your company's roughly between, most of the time it's about 30 million to $100 million of valuation. And that's, think about like Tiger Global or SoftBank as like massive global investment firms coming in to negotiate deals with you or buy out your businesses. These are people buying out, Kevin O'Leary's businesses and things like that. So there's a lot of pressure in this stage, of course, right? Because you might be the CEO of the company, but there's also a board now, and if they don't think you're doing a good enough job, they might, you might still be an investor, but might not keep you as the CEO because you gave up a lot of your control a lot of times to get here. So you're playing this game, right? Of like, how much more of my company could I give out or give away, while also keeping the ability to, protect this if I want this to be my job as well too. And so a lot of times it's like you need to triple your company's size, right? Because you're still in that massive growth phase. You could be $1 billion company, or venture capitalists are going to replace you. So you're now driving a rocket and you've ignited the tank and fuel. You're massively accelerating, but somebody else is holding the throttle and can control how fast it moves and what direction it moves. And you better be able to pivot with it. So a lot of times by the time you get here, your personal ownership is probably about 20% of the company. That comes from Equivista study. So Series C, right, very, very low. But at the end of the day, right, from where we started, let's say you were in the pre-seed round, your company might be worth $1 million to $5 million. So you own about $1 to $5 million worth. In this phase, you own 20% of up to 300 million, right? So that's 60 million. So your return on investment is a lot better. But you also have to deal with a lot of people that you may or may not like. But again, most of the time, people coming in know what they're doing at this phase, and you're better off tying your ship along to other whales that have survived this market a lot of the times. What do you think? What do you think goes through people's heads in this phase? If you've taken a company that's yours all the way through to this phase, and you're now making partnerships to knock maybe your ownership down from like 50 or 40% down to 20%, be able to make it from 30 million to $100 million. What do you think's going through your head?
yeah, I'm sure that's frustrating. And for the most part, just because you have to constantly be in a confliction. I mean, maybe not. Maybe all of your investors in a perfect world are just, exactly like you. And
Rarely happens. It rarely happens.
exactly, they're all exactly like you, and they all have the same goals and vision for the company. Yeah, I would just say like at that point, I'm sure the only thing I mean, of course, besides like the everyday activities that are required to make the have the company continue moving forward. But other than that, I'm sure like it's extremely frustrating to have to be in constant confliction with different viewpoints, dissenting opinions. But you know, that's a decision, like you said, it's a decision you have to make because otherwise you're not going to scale from like what it is that you started with, you know, back in seed, pre-seed, series A. Like you're continuously adding more value for yourself. Like it's not like you're losing, you know, the end goal, which is money. But it's probably a continuous pain in the butt, to say the least, to have that confliction going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just you have to, you kind of have to though. Again, for example, what do you know what percentage roughly of Amazon Jeff Bezos owns?
I'd say like 15.
He owns 8% of Amazon. So he's obviously had to make massive deals, but Amazon's worth hundreds of billions, if not over $1 trillion now. Let's just say it's worth $1 trillion. You own 8% of $1 trillion. That's, you know, $80 billion just from that one investment. And obviously, he's divested into a lot of other companies, I'm sure, too. And that's just the main Amazon. That's not like all the subsidiary companies as well, too. So, like, $80 billion with a B versus holding on to 100% and being worth $30 million is, you can't even comprehend that level of growth. But yes, he's had to partner with people. The important part is understanding your product and your mission from the start and being passionate about your company, where there's really no reason not to have you. And a lot of times the boards, right, as long as you're doing your job, they kind of like to play the back end scene. They don't want to be the face of the company. They're people that are used to investing in companies. They want to support you as the creator, if they're actually good venture capital firms, because they know that you have understood the journey from day one. And that's actually attracted to a lot of potential customers too. So they don't want to necessarily just rip you out unless there's a huge reason to. Yeah, but it can be frustrating because you're now seeing the majority of your company go away. You have to put the ego aside and say, I may have done that, but as the numbers go, I have also just exponentially grown my net worth from this decision alone. And so, right, you need the money, right? And the money a lot of times at this point is getting you global recognition. You're getting sponsored at massive events, sporting venues, things like that, mass media, you know, promotions, ads, things like that you just can't get otherwise. So this is where you start to take over competitors and where you absolutely need that advantage, and where other competitors will probably try to buy you out too. You're going to be facing a lot of that pressure. Like they'll come in and try to shut you down. You got to be willing to negotiate and prove to not only the competitors, but to your own board why you, as the creator of this company, deserve to keep the company instead of getting rid of it, even if they think it's the better idea to sell. So you're kind of fighting your own people about why you still should have your own company that you started. So that's the frustration a lot of people start to face at this point. Now let's talk about the main exit for most people. This is the late stage or IPO stage. This is what I call the golden handcuffs. This is where you're worth between, you know, 100 million and about $1 billion in funding. This is the average unicorn experience. They get here in about 5 to 7 years total, between about 5 to 6 rounds of funding. There's Series A1, Series A2, all those different types of rounds in between. The exit for this is IPO or acquisition. These are the only reasons a venture capitalist, right, that comes in and sponsors your company from the start wants to do. So you have your options, right? And eventually, right, this is important because this is what Altura will at some point do. We either invest in your company because you're going to take it public one day, and then the public's going to come in and raise the share price drastically and provide funding to your business, which will allow us to capitalize on the return from that. Or you're going to be acquired by a bigger fish company that's maybe private already or has, you know, already IPO'd, and we're going to sell that for a much higher price than we came in and invested in that. Do you know, to get through this last phase, we need to talk about how ownership is actually, you know, how it works in a company. Let's say you and I both own, let's say you and I start a we are Walter White and Jesse, right? And we are starting the blue crystal meth business, right? We each have 10 shares of the company. All right. So if somebody else comes in, right? I can't remember, Tuco comes in, right? And he wants to own let's say 5 shares of our company. How does that work when we both have 10 shares? Where do those shares come from? Do we give him our shares? Do more shares just come out of nowhere? Do they get divided? What happens to create new shares?
I mean, can't you do all three of those things? I mean, there's strategy, I'm sure, but you could either just sell your shares, which I think is what generally happens when you go on Robinhood and you just buy shares. You're just buying somebody else's that had a sell order. Though you could also split, which we've seen done multiple times with all sorts of companies. Tesla does. I think they've had a couple splits by now. Google's done it. The company that hasn't, Berkshire Hathaway. And
But you can only go instantly go. You can only instantly go and buy other shares on the market if the company is public, right? Which means that the shares are being bought and sold in real time by everyday people. So unless you're making a deal with me specifically for my shares, shares have to be created in a typical corporation structure. So we both keep 10 shares, but let's say an additional 5 shares now come to Tuco, and there's now 25 shares instead of 20. So that means instead of me owning 50% and you owning 50%, we now own 10 out of 25 shares. So right, that's about, I'm trying to do the math here. It's like 40%, right? It'd be 40%, 2/5 instead of 1/2. So we just lost 10% a piece, right, to do that. But eventually you get to a point where you have split up, right, so many times that everyone's shares are diluted. This is what happened with Mark Zuckerberg, right? I forgot. I'm forgetting the guy's name. That he initially had as his co-founder. But what happened is Zuckerberg made an agreement with big investors, right? And they basically, I think it was Peter Thiel came in, and they what they did, right, when his partner, they wanted to like basically take over his partner's shares or kick him out of the company. They allowed him to keep his current shares. What they did is they just issued additional shares to employees and current working members. So like people that were investing and actively participating in the company, which wasn't him anymore, would continue to get just dumped with more and more shares while he still had the same fixed amount of shares. So then it just diluted his ownership way down to like from like or like I think it was like 18% or something like that. I don't know the numbers, all the way down to like single digits. But basically, that's the danger, right? So this is really important. So looking at not just how many shares you own, but the percentage of shares tells you what's really going on in the big picture. So you get to this late stage, right? And it's been private basically this whole way through. Now you're at the big champagne bottle popping, like you see in Wolf of Wall Street, taking Steve Madden public, right, as the big IPO release, making them the big name on the block. Your options are a company buys you and you've decided that's probably not feasible. Maybe we're too big to fail. Maybe we want to outcompete these companies. We think we're better. We don't want to be bought out by them. We want to beat them. So we want the public's help. That's the only, there's too much money that we need to expand. And there's no one firm that can just come in and give that to us, or they would have already if the deal was good enough. So we need the public to come in and buy shares to help us grow. So we're basically going to dilute our company even more and throw additional shares out to the public and allow them to come in, buy in those amounts in smaller values. And the public that in real time can help actively, market and value our company for us. And just by being on the stock market, right, kind of like launching a meme coin these days, you kind of get instant money made because people are just paying attention to what's coming out and getting released. 90% of unicorns, though, that IPO, they underperform what they initially value. You a lot of times see companies spike massively on an IPO, which is IPO, by the way, is just you releasing into the stock market. It's I think it's independent public offering.
initial public.
Initial public offering, yeah. From McKinsey, right? The biggest consulting company out there. So on your IPO, you're like, you've seen some massive failures with this too very recently, but I'm opening myself up for business. I'm valuing my shares at $13 a share. And then within 2 weeks, right, it's priced at $6. So the public said, yeah, that's great. We don't really think it's worth that. And then the public, obviously, right, is speculative on a lot of these times, and they're betting whether or not they think it's going to go up or down. So you see a massive kind of settling into what the public sees as your long-term value. We've seen Beyond Meat. I think it was priced at like $22 a share. And I just saw on the internet they're worth like $1 a share now. They've lost like almost all of their value from when they launched a couple of years ago. But obviously, like, that's why it's really important to be clear about the public about your long-term value. If you're a trending company that's kind of hasn't established its position in the market, or is kind of a weird new thing, and it doesn't really have a lot of grab with the everyday people, you're probably not going to IPO and do too well unless people can clearly understand your business plan. Kind of like launching Altura or launching our crypto. So if unicorn funding, right, is a rocket launch, right? Where venture capitalists, private investors strap on the boosters and kind of give you that like gas, that push behind you. How does that feel? And this is going back to the beginning because we're going to build up to this. How does that feel if you're the 19-year-old that we talked about at the beginning, trying to hit your first $10,000 a month, right? And you maybe have the idea, you're trying to get off the ground. The first time somebody comes in and is willing to help you, what do you think? Because we didn't cover that. What do you think their thoughts are? Let's tie this back into the beginning.
The first time someone's willing to come help you is you're starting your own startup?
Yeah, let's say, it could be a friend, it could be a venture capitalist, but you've proven an idea. They want to come in and offer you a big chunk of money. They're not asking for anything in return. They're trusting your vision and they want to be part of what you have to offer. What are your thoughts receiving that money?
Man, that sort of like would validate. I mean, just from my experience you get to a certain point where it feels like, and this is why most of your guys' competition out there is like new startups is honestly not even like your competition is not a competition. People are going to give up anyway, because it gets to a point where it's so difficult to like continue to show up and not really feel like you're seeing anything in return as a reward for your work. I feel like that instance would be the first time when you finally receive some sort of validation, like externally, not just from yourself. Not that you need that, but I'm sure it feels super rewarding to have somebody believe in your vision like that enough to just trust in you and trust in it enough to just give you the resource you need right now to move forward. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing huge. You're not in a later series of funding, but that initial boost, that's got to feel like you're the man, like something like you finally got some sort of tangible reward from the hard work you've been putting in up to this point.
Yeah, a lot of I would say especially, right? Because thinking about the type of person that even does startups at the beginning, they're probably somebody that like wants to feel like, they're ambitious. They got something to prove. So for the first time, somebody coming in and validating that is a huge, huge win. But now you have this massive pressure, right? Because you might have promised even just a small amount of your company to them. It's usually a larger amount, right? Because you're not valued very high. So depending on the amount of money they're going to give you, they're going to ask for a big chunk because it's a big speculative risk if you don't make money off this. So there's this pressure. And for the first time, you're confronted with, okay, now I'm kind of giving up a little bit of my company. I want to make sure this pays off. So you work harder than ever. And that kind of lights that flame, I would say, for most people. But that's being able to that's why I think ego kills a lot of these projects. If you're not comfortable giving part of your business away strategically for a good deal, which is key, you're not going to make it. Like you're not going to outcompete people because somebody is going to come along with the same idea and raise more money than you, right? So a lot of people, if you're worried about my advice is if you're worried about sharing your idea with somebody because you think that they're going to steal it from you or copy it, then your business was probably never going to succeed in the first place because your idea wasn't unique enough to the market. If it can be that easily replicated, right? So you need something that's unique and that will stand on its own 2 feet. So let's talk about like 2 examples. One of them I already mentioned. The first one, though, is Uber. I guess that was kind of the one I mentioned more than the other one, but it started with a lot of money, actually. $1.25 million, right? Most of them start with under $1 million, but this one started with a little bit more in seed money. So, right, between pre-seed and seed. So that was basically developing Uber's app, their product. They had a lot of money come into that. They, by Series A, were worth $11 million. And by Series C, they created $258 million of value. So between 2 rounds of funding, they went from 11 million to 258 million. Crazy, crazy return. And then when they IPO'd on the stock market from 258 million, what do you think their valuation went up to?
Double, triple.
From 258 million, they went up to $82 billion. Billion, because you're talking about Uber Eats, all of the extra benefits they got, the partnerships they made, the infrastructure, right? The value of capturing basically a monopoly on a delivery or transport service, right? Except for Lyft, which came in later. Uber was kind of the OG at this, right? It was way earlier than Lyft. Lyft came in as a late-term competitor. So they basically own the market. And so having people, being worth maybe $1 million, $1.2 million, and maybe even not being able to have an idea that would launch on time versus being able to give away most of your company and still own 5% of $82 billion. That's $4 billion. I'd say you're doing pretty well when you put a B on that. The other example is Airbnb, which is the antithesis of this. They started with $30,000, right, of kind of venture capital funding initially, just kind of their seed round. Their pre-seed round actually was 30K. So between like private investors and friends and family, they got 30K raised. Their seed round, like initially, between all their communities and first term investors, they got $600,000. It's really good, right? Because they had a performing business model. They needed to expand rapidly. I would actually really watch and learn about Airbnb's story. It's awesome. But they wanted to take over the hotel market. They had a great idea. They needed to expand into more markets, and they needed to incentivize people to do that. So that's what that seed money came in to do. By Series A, they went from $600,000 of seed raised money to $7.2 million in valuation. By Series B, which was their last round of funding before the IPO, what do you think they took their company to after 7.2 million?
The last one threw me off. It's got to be billions too, yeah?
Well, by Series B, Series C would be approaching $1 billion or more, but
I'm going to say 500 million.
not that much. They almost 15x or probably 12, 13x their company's value, already being worth 7 million. So they were worth $112 million, right? 10 to 12xing their companies. Imagine 10 to 12xing your company in the span of about 18 months. It's crazy. That's like doubling your size every single month. And by IPO, they were worth $100 billion on the public offer. So they started with $30,000 and they IPO'd at $100 billion with a B. That's why again, creating important technology that is unique to you and putting good time in it and willing to make partnerships with people that see your vision and can take it one step further can be the difference between it having a K at the end and having a B at the end with the same amount of money. All right, so again, the common thread between these is just massive ability to take action and go out and make partnerships. Blitz scaling, right? By being able to go out and aggressively sell your company and get funding. It's hard. You have to put yourself in front of a lot of people. And if you're not the Stanford grad, right, a lot of times you get rejected until you have something tangible to prove. And then, using venture capital fuel the right way, not giving up too much of your company. It's a fine balance. And honestly, my best, advice for you guys would be make the best partnership and give up more of your company on the first round. But do it with somebody that genuinely knows how to navigate this process. Because if they're also locked in with you from the first round of funding, they're not going to want to give up their percentages either, right? So you have to split up the rest of the company, and they also don't want other people telling both of you guys now what to do. So you find a venture capitalist that is smart and isn't going to take bullshit, and make sure that's one of your first investors. And then you can navigate that and turn other people partnerships into fuel and not a poison, right, that rots your company from the inside. Here's a weird fact. 62% of people in their under 30s range, right? So you and me, right? Most of the people watching this, 62%, we said this last time, now trust crypto over banks. Why is that important? What do you think we're going to talk about here?
That's going to be a tie into what we're doing.
Yes, sir. I'm going to talk about Altura's project, right? And obviously you guys know about it. It's our ability to create a space of entrepreneurs and technology, right? We're creating Nova AI, which will compete with Grok, ChatGPT, and provide insights to help you navigate your life, learn about yourself, become a better business owner, and have the same level of technology and expertise you would on any of those other AI tools, with privacy, keeping your data safe. But to do this, to create this AI tool, to create business funding, startup incubators to help give you guys money back for your businesses, to create an education system to teach you how to run a company, to provide everything you guys are going to need in one spot. We also need help too. It's really expensive to do this by ourselves. We created a utility token, right? And the whole point of the utility token is not to raise money. It's not an investment. We're flipping the script, right, and playing the game a little different way. In the process, though, this helps us expand our value and what we can actually offer back to people. And this is a different way of growing an enterprise. So the traditional flaw is that venture capitalists, when they come in and partner with you, they extract equity from your business, and they then control, right, directly what goes on. And they can take, right, they can secure the company even out from the people who started it and remove the ability to make decisions in the future. They can create hyper growth though, but a lot of times that can be dangerous for the initial intent of the company, and it's going to pivot sometimes beyond what you initially were intending for. So to secure the vision and to allow the community to have a bigger role, right, there's other models that exist now. One of these is the same model we're using with our Altura token, $alt otherwise, which will be launching probably in the next month or two. We're going to keep you guys updated on the details. We're still working through a lot of stuff with that. But this is a SEC compliant, right, style utility token. A lot of these projects, right, that market to the moon or buy it now, it's going to go up in value. That's not what we're doing. And we're not promising investment returns legally, right? This isn't investment advice. Read the disclaimers. But most 95+% of the projects that just say to the moon, they're not doing things the legal and ethical way, because you can't promise returns unless you're registered as a security and doing things through the SEC properly. SEC isn't the football division. It's the Securities and Exchange Commission, who regulates all of our securities, aka investments on the stock market. Okay. So to be different, to not be a security, you need to provide an underlying utility, which means that you can't just buy a stock or a crypto because you want it to go up. Now, naturally, right, there's going to be people who do that. But that's not why we're marketing it. That's not why we created it. We created it to allow for a use. So using the crypto unlocks benefits inside of the space that we made. For example, you can use alt, right, the token, and you can stake it, meaning you can agree to hold on to it for a certain amount of time to help us grow the value, because we don't have all these people dumping tokens, right, or buying it and, aggressively selling it. You can help us grow. You can hold on to your tokens and that'll give you access to in-person events, maybe use of our AI tools for free, where otherwise you'd be paying for ChatGPT or Grok. You can get premium access to education, specific benefits that we're going to unlock inside. Maybe subscriptions to common softwares you're using in your everyday business, and then potentially even funding for your company. Then behind that, we have the membership passes, right, which are technically NFTs, if you guys are familiar, but they're on the blockchain and they're verifiable in real time. This membership pass is what gets you through the door of the nightclub, right? It's something you can confirm and validate on your phone in real time, which creates a resellable membership. For the first time ever, you can have the utility of joining someone's course, right? And even paying, you could pay thousands of dollars for it. But then on the back end, once you've extracted all the value, once you've taken the courses, if you want, you have the option to resell that on the market, or just continue to hold on to it. And for your lifetime, right, continue to participate and gain benefit from that. As we host real world meetups in your local town and you want to come show up, as we produce more, course videos or content in our academy, you guys can continue to learn from that. There's a million potential benefits we could offer in the future too, which by being a lifetime member, by holding a token instead of just holding the crypto, you get access to that as well. And that's already live. You guys can go check that on the website. And then finally, the last thing I'll say is as we grow Altura, right, people that can't afford the token, right, and you've seen similar projects specifically in NFTs, right, like Bored Apes, which are now selling for almost $40,000 a token. They used to sell for $200,000 a token. We have our token, which sells for just $400 right now. And is even smaller in supply than projects like that. We're gonna sell those, right? That's gonna create a baseline revenue to help get our project off the ground, and provide utility back to you guys. Some of our crypto that we launch will exist in the community fund, which we can use to provide benefits back to you guys. Some of that's going to go into a startup incubator, meaning that we're going to give money to you guys in the form of benefits, utility, as we've said, to come to us as if you were approaching a venture capitalist, but this time one that doesn't care if you went to Stanford or not. And you can say, hey, I have this great idea. I want to make a media production company. I want to follow people around, film vlogs with them, and then post them on a YouTube channel and then monetize. And we say, okay, that's great. What are you expecting to make? What's your revenue? We'll interview you on a live stream like this with our subscribers and members watching. And if the community, people that hold the NFT token, as well as the crypto, which will get you votes, watch you, they can stake those different options and their votes accordingly to vote on whether or not they like your idea. If they like it, then on behalf of Altura, your business is funded, and we'll work out the details with you on that. And then we'll send you the funding in Altura, right? So there's a utility again by using the same token to help get your company off the ground. This means that 19-year-olds actually have a chance, without going to college, of actually getting a business off the ground, right? You don't have to be the one person that makes it to Shark Tank. Anybody that genuinely wants to change the world and has a productive business model, which we will help teach you how to do that inside of our education, can come back and use the funds that we're offering, or maybe you've even paid in to be a member, to help get your venture going. The winners, right, of these different pitches that come out and have great ideas get the funding, and a lot of times you return that benefit to us as a partial owner by maybe giving free or discounted use to a software or a podcast or a private, coaching or whatever service you guys offer back to us. And the community will get to benefit from having that as well. So that's utility. Everything we do is focused on utility, not investment. But obviously, the plan is to grow the community, and everything around it should hopefully match that if we're doing our job correctly. So it's the first ever true win-win. You get to keep 100% of your benefit, right? If you want, hold on to the token forever. Hold on to the crypto forever. If you want, sell it, get out, do whatever you want, but you can move that, right? That utility can be held or it can be let go of. And you can benefit by things actually happening in the community by holding on to it. It's not a to the moon project that you buy and hope that it goes up in value, and that's the only thing being staked on it. You get to win as we create more benefits every single day that we work on this. And finally, you guys get access to everything that we create from this point in the future. So you're kind of looking at our vision, and you're deciding whether or not you think you're going to get utility out of that, and making the decision to commit to, participating in our events. And again, in the real world, when Anthony and I host our first couple meetups in major cities, you guys get to come ask questions at the door, show your crypto wallet that has an NFT in it, and we'll let you in for free because you have utility behind that. That's my rant. So Anthony, all right, if venture capital funding, people coming in from the outside, kind of like Altura will at some point to fund your company, most of the time is a casino, right? And it's where the house always wins, where a lot of times people don't know what they're doing. So venture capitalists will come in and aggressively offer probably way too much money or way too much ownership of your company. The house tends to win. Compare kind of our community fund and what we're trying to do with our startup incubator to that, and kind of how you think that changes the standard game.
Yeah. So the way it's different in my eyes is because of who's running it. Like, if you think about, I've mentioned so many times, and we've both kind of mentioned it in previous podcasts, where like the people that are sending you this offer that have created this community are only like maybe 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of you. Caleb and I are still trying to figure this out about how this works in conjunction with just setting up Altura and all the benefits that we put together. Like, even to this day, a lot of time we spent is still being spent on development, on figuring out what marketing looks like. We're not much different than you guys. So the difference is that instead of a group or an individual of people that has already made it in life, is old, has all the money they could ever dream of, and is looking to expand their reach and power, instead of that person coming in who likely doesn't care for your development or the fact that it's your business, they care to see their pockets get larger. It's a couple of kids, I mean, that's what I'm calling us, but also like with a community of other like-minded entrepreneurs that are coming together to see to the success of one another and to see to the success of your business. Because every time you succeed, everyone else in the community also succeeds because they gain access to what it is you've built. And through the utility of owning our cryptocurrency, with every person that joins too, that sounds a little bit schemy, but that's the way it works in practice, right? Is that every person that joins too, it inherently makes the community better because it goes back into the development and it goes back into offering of the benefits that go to each and every one of the community members, either through development of your business being something like somebody makes the next Opus clip. And we used that line a lot when we were first starting out. Yes, everybody else in the community now gets access to your Opus clip thing that you've built because you were a part of Altura and because these other people have their NFT pass, or maybe even a certain set amount of the crypto, right? It's a way for you to get the resources you need. And by resources, we mean more than just funding. That's another thing that's different about it, is the person that is coming at you from the top that's already has their billions of dollars, they're not going to give you much more. They're not going to give you an ounce of effort put into figuring out what it is you need to actually succeed. They're just going to give you the money and say, figure it out, in exchange for a crazy, for the stage of development you're probably in, crazy commission for themselves. We're actually giving you the tools you need to even start, to get off the ground, just by even if all you used was like just talking to Nova AI to figure out what it is you should focus on as someone who's interested in said niche. And then using the calendar function that we have live right now, you can check on the website too, to plan out how you're going to attack those tasks daily. You'd be many steps ahead of the rest of your competition that I mentioned earlier, that just stops when things seemingly too difficult for you to figure out. So there not only is there that, there's also our Academy educational hub for entrepreneurial education coming out in a later phase as well. The community of other people that are doing the same thing you are doing. You get to literally learn alongside people that have your same interests and that are trying to succeed in the same stage as you are. And that's not something you're going to find from being invested in by someone who's already at the top and is a little bit too distant from doing the actual work themselves to relate to you. So that's the main difference as far as I see it.
It's like again, I compared it to the casino, and the house usually almost always wins. If you're trying to do this by yourself, if you don't know how to launch a business, then even thinking about getting funding or partnering with people seems like you're gonna get taken advantage of, or it's just not gonna work. So why even do it? You're better off just doing it by yourself. In this case, by partnering with a community of people, right? That's not being led by greedy, enterprise value and things like that. And instead, it's based on what the community decides it thinks it wants. In this case, it's like playing poker, and you don't have to win. You can look at other people's cards, and you can, team up with them and give them your chips, and they can play the best hand available, and then everybody can win, and split the rewards from that. So you're not just betting on your own success and trying to make it alone. If somebody has the same idea as you, or maybe they could be a good complement to you, and they don't have money either, the two of you guys can meet inside of our community. You're going to meet interesting and determined people in our space in the networking hub that we have and will be building, in addition to the live chats, which are already open, and you guys can start talking to each other in there. And you can figure out what you want to do. So instead of trying to compete, team up, put your chips together, and then come to us and pitch your idea in front of everybody else. And if they like it, let's get you funded, and let's compete against these venture capital firms that seem to control everything, right? And it's the only way I think you guys can win. It's like if unicorns are like the mythical beasts, right, being just kind of tamed and corralled by the venture capitalists, this is probably the only way where we can take you guys, the average like workhorse, and give you guys wings and power you up to become what will be a unicorn by adding the things you guys might be missing, giving you the education to kind of give you that extra push, giving you the people that you might need to make it happen. And most importantly, giving you the money and the chance to platform yourself in front of thousands of people who not only will decide if your company can get funded instead of a greedy millionaire or billionaire, but also will be your first 100 or 1,000 users. Imagine that. And that's literally something that we're already moving into existence. It exists. You can go to alturasociety.com and check it out. And it's why, right, we're comfortable talking about it. We're comfortable, growing it with you guys, offering this utility token to give benefit back to you guys, and doing everything with you guys, helping us steer the ship, because we know that this idea is too good and too intricate and too massive to be easily, duped or copied, because it's just too massive of a vision, and we need everybody on board too. That's why we're working. That's why we're podcasting every single day, to get as many of you guys involved in this as possible. Because if we garner enough support, it's inevitable. Like we will be able to compete against Google, Microsoft, like big names. We're already trying to compete against Grok and ChatGPT at some point. Like what else can we do if just a few more of you people come in the space and we partner with you? I would personally invest my own money into your companies if it's good. And you can, as long as your pitch is good enough, even if the community doesn't like it, I might like it, Anthony might like it, and we will still make it happen. So take the only, hand reached out you're going to get in this space, especially in this tough economy, and do something with it. I promise you, it's not as expensive as you think it is to join. You can even join for free and get some of the benefits, but we'd love to see you guys inside. Anthony, what do you got as a final call to action?
Final call to action. I mean, all the work I'm doing right now, all the work Caleb and I combined are doing right now is to give you guys something tangible that you can try out, risk-free at this point in time, because it costs nothing for you to hop on, check out what we're building with Nova AI. All the work I'm doing for marketing, trying to get it in front of people's face at this point in time, and we just want you to give it a try. We just want you to come check it out. It's as simple as just typing in alturasociety.com on your browser, make a free account, and literally just explore, do some exploring, check out the homepage, see where the roadmap is going to take us in the near future here, because it's not hard to see the value that's being portrayed and the value that's already established on the platform for you as an entrepreneur. If you take yourself seriously, in the space of entrepreneurship. I promise you, I mean, I'm using my government name here on the internet, on social media, on whatever else, that this is going to be something you'll gain value from, if nothing else, by even just associating with the platform. It's free to use Nova AI. Go check it out. My actual call to action is to go check that in particular out. We're coming out with a mobile app soon, probably within the month, even probably shorter than that. But it's going to be, as Caleb said, it's a contender with, the top AI platforms like Grok, ChatGPT. But the difference is that this is going to break that cycle of constantly taking so much of your time figuring out what it is you should be doing instead of actually taking action. It does that for you. So all that you're left with doing is taking action towards success in your business. I mean, right now we're still in like some of the initial phases, as you can see in our roadmap on the website. But as Caleb said, as more and more people join, and people are joining, daily, weekly, it's inevitable that we're the value to be gained from future phases is coming. It's already on its way. We're building momentum. As Caleb said, we're here podcasting. Caleb does it, rain or shine, party or no party on Fridays, doesn't matter. He's always here podcasting for you guys, bringing value in this way, which is just another way on top of what we already got going on in the platform, because we believe in it. And we know that if that's how you feel about your own business, let's kind of join heads here and see what we can accomplish as a community together, as it's meant to be, as we built it out to be in our platform as well. So go check out Nova AI, check out the website, if nothing else. We appreciate you guys hopping onto these podcasts. Seriously, it helps us a ton. Just to, gain familiarity in the space with what it is we built. And we appreciate you guys' time for sure.
In 2025, and I appreciate that, Anthony, I'll close with this. The average fund after the actual effects of inflation are tied in only grows about 3.2% in actual like profits, right? Consumer confidence right now is 74% negative. 3 out of 4 people do not like the economy. Very, steady on that. The power is starting to shift from Sand Hill and Silicon Valley to basements, like genuinely basements. It used to be a funny saying, but it's actually people in their parents' basements making this stuff happen. If you have AI, if you have an understanding, which we will also teach you, I will personally put content out, I promise, at some point, teaching you guys how to start businesses using AI and power that stuff up. It's going to be a massive topic. I don't think Iman Gadji, Andrew Tate are really covering that too much. We're going to try to, fill that gap and serve people there, because I understand that's a big need for you guys. But you need to team up, right? And that's the big message from tonight. Nobody gets to $100 billion valuations without giving away a little piece of what they're working on and inviting people in. Ego will kill you if you let it. If you're willing to put that aside, if you're willing to make partnerships with in the right times, right, when you actually think it's best for you, and we're inviting you to make a partnership by joining our project and basically, using our resources to grow, and hopefully you end up becoming successful and we invest in you. Maybe we own 10% of your company and we give you the money to make millions of dollars, and it's a massively successful partnership. That's a win-win for both of us. And then hopefully you come back and give a benefit back to our members in our community, right? And that's something that college isn't doing. College isn't giving you money to go out and start a company. They're teaching you about like the, people, planet, profit frameworks that you've heard over and over again if you're a business major, and aren't actually leading to tangible steps, right? Especially the academy courses we're going to put out. They're focused on action. They're not going to be very long. It's going to be very gritty and informal, because it's not supposed to be cinematic, Elon Gadji style, like Netflix. We're going to put that type of stuff out in the future. But right now, it's about getting in the dirt, in the trenches, and getting just enough knowledge to start, and then asking real questions, because that's how you actually think, which means you're actually learning and growing, and where the real creativity comes out. It's not about the initial idea. It's about you trying something by not having sat there for 2 hours watching the perfectly cinematic video that Iman Gadji put out. And it's you taking action on something, getting confused, and then going to Nova and having it help you understand what you might be missing, where your flaws are, or going to our live chat or our networking hub and finding somebody that's passionate about solving that specific problem. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's fundraising, right? Maybe it's software development, and teaming up with them to create something you probably otherwise couldn't. That's the only way you survive, by getting the resources and being humble enough to use them. Thank you guys for your time. Anthony also said it best. We appreciate everything you're doing, but if you want to take action, you got to go on alturasociety.com, ALTURA society.com. the utility token, right, the crypto that will power our entire engine of our economy inside the platform will drop pretty soon. We have a Discord that'll promote it. It should be accessible on the platform. We're putting a lot of hard work into, making it fun. We're gonna have game nights and stuff. Anthony's been working on that type of stuff for spicing it up a little bit. But thank you guys for your time. It's been over an hour. This will probably be a featured video because I think this was a really, really good summary of why Altura exists as a concept. So we're gonna try to make this one of the primary videos for our project. And if you have any questions, obviously the best resource is to go on the platform, make a free account. Yes, there is such thing as a free lunch with no catch. And you can go into our live chat and we'll answer your questions. Because hopefully, if there is a catch, it's that you guys will understand what we're doing and hopefully buy into our mission. But that's because you genuinely liked it, right? There's no hard ass there. So take care. This has been episode, I think 33 is what we're on today. And as we say every time, have a good night, and I'm rooting for you.
Take care.